Straightsmilesolutions.com, and I just posted another video that was more about braces and a space that won't close. Now we're going to talk about Invisalign or another brand of clear aligners, what happens if you have a space that won't close. And I'm going to take you kind of through the mental roadmap of an orthodontist when we are encountering this situation with a patient, how we think, what we check for, and kind of probably the order we do it in. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get through these 6 steps. They're pretty similar to some of the other ones that I've posted for my braces and some of my other videos, so you might be familiar with them. The concepts don't change. I mean, a lot of this stuff is just foundation, right? So make sure your Clin Check or your ClearPilot or whatever setup this is checked by an orthodontist. Make sure it's reasonable, predictable, and at a healthy pace. I've got a lot of content on like that in my YouTube channel. For the most part, this is probably the most common issue, is that y'all are doing some junky Clin Checks that are just not predictable. Just because the technicians say you can do it doesn't mean it can or should happen or it is safe. So you have to have someone take a look at it. So if it's a bad plan, well, yeah, then that's the reason why it's not moving. So run it by somebody, and by somebody, I mean not somebody that works for the aligner company that you're asking about. It needs to be someone independent that has nothing to gain or lose by this case. Okay, next. Check your tracking. Just because you have a good plan doesn't mean your patient's compliant. And the only way you're going to know if your patient is compliant is first to see if you have a good plan. Then you have to have tracking. So that means a month or 2 of photos every single week, aligners in, slightly open. If you're not sure what a tracking photo is, check out my YouTube channel, put in the keyword tracking. This is the second most common thing, if not the first. These are maybe interchangeable. The patient says they're compliant, but they're really not. And then we will know if we see those tracking photos, assuming the plan is good. If the plan wasn't good, it's not their fault. They might really actually be wearing it like they said. It just is not going to happen. If it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. All right, next. You've got all those tracking photos. You used your Invisalign virtual or your Grin or your in-hand dental or your dental monitoring, and you know that patient is compliant. And remember, guys, there are plenty of programs out there that are totally HIPAA compliant. A lot of you guys are making in-house programs. Okay, I don't really care what you do. Please just work with HIPAA compliant ones. Do whatever you got to do. But there's no reason you cannot get tracking photos, weekly for a month. It's not that hard. All right. Again, check your bite clearance with articulating paper. If there is no room, it is not going to close. It's that simple. If there's no clearance, if your top teeth are hitting the bottom teeth, it's not going to close, even if the space is there. So if you don't have clearance, it ain't going to close. Real easy. Again, going back to this, making sure that's right, but double checking as you go. Not an interference, then what? Take your x-ray, make sure your roots are parallel. Sometimes it's the shape of the tooth and not the actual space. Sometimes there's a subgingival contact that it's actually not interfering in the space closure. It's not a space, it's the shape of the tooth. So you got to make sure that's not the issue. But unless you take those x-rays, you're not going to know if the roots are parallel. Okay, it's not contact points. Then we move on to, my standard check on supplements, GLPs, bisphosphonates, for any type of medications. You'd be surprised what people are taking that they don't say they're taking. You have to specifically ask, well, what gets put in your mouth that is not food? Any type of supplement, vitamins, herbs, anything from the GNC store. What are you taking from your Chinese, pharmacist, whatever? You'd be surprised what people take, and sometimes it just means you have to slow down the movements. Take more x-rays, things like that. I don't think any medication is going to stop teeth from moving, but it can slow it down, which you need to slow it down even more than we normally do, and check more often. And then lastly, if you're still stubborn, it's still stumped, you've done all these things and everything's fine, take a CBCT, check the PDL, have it read. It might be partially ankylosed, not full ankylosis. So maybe you saw movement for a while and then it stopped. That can happen actually. So there's nothing you can do in that situation. It's done, right? I mean, that is the last resort. If that happens, I'm sorry, we just can't move anymore. You're gonna have to restore to finish. All this stuff is gonna be covered in your informed consent. So don't freak out on any of this stuff, because all this stuff should be covered in your informed consent. Yeah, the patient might get a little frustrated, but that's not your fault. These are regular things that happen with aligner treatment. So talk to us if you have any other questions. All right, thanks.